Hi, I'm Yolanda from Sew Can Take. Here's another easy dress tutorial for you. In this tutorial, it's a dress that has shirring at the top. I love this dress because there's so many variations you can do with it. So I made mine strapless, but you could certainly add straps to yours. Mine is a maxi dress. You can make yours whatever length you want it. You could even make it shorter and make it a top if you wanted to. It's a very easy dress. I would call this a very beginner pattern. The only thing you have to remember, which I'm going to tell you in the video, you need elastic thread. You need some stretch thread that you put on your bobbin. So you need to hand wind your bobbin with that thread. Then you might need to switch your sewing machine stitch. Like I said, this dress is really easy to make. It's just time consuming. You just need some patience because you need to draw yourself out stitching lines. Here's a little tip. You might get away with that if you're able to space your lines based upon the width of your presser foot. So I drew lines on mine, but as I was making it, I realized I could just use my presser foot as a guide and space my lines accordingly. So just kind of play around with it and see what works for you. Okay, I'm using 1.5 yards of fabric. So for the top part of it, roughly, you want your bust size and then times 1.5. So if my bust is 36, then I want my fabric to be 54 inches wide. Okay, so that's why I'm using knit, because knit tends to come wider. Sometimes you can find woven fabrics that are wider than 45. But for the most part, it's knit. And you can certainly use a woven fabric. You would just cut 2 pieces, no big deal. But I have a knit fabric here so that I can just do one long continuous stitch. And then I have 1.5 yards of 54 inches. So it's basically, it's a strapless dress. So it's the length that I want the dress when it's finished. So say if I want, my dress length to be 52 inches, I added a couple extra inches because we'll sew down the top. We'll sew the top and then we'll hem the bottom. So it's your upper bust for the strapless dress, however long you want it. So mine is going to go to the floor. So for me, that's 54 inches, and that will include enough for me to do a hem and also for me to hem the top edge of it as well. Okay, so my fabric is folded. So I have selvage here and I have selvage here. So what I'm going to do is just open it up so that I have just one wide piece of fabric. So before you start shirring, you want to finish the top edge of it first. So I am just going to turn mine under maybe 1/2 inch or so, and you just sew all along that edge. I'm thinking I might put elastic in it. Whether I decide to or not, you still need to do this. I'm just going to pin 1/2 inch. And if you have a knit fabric and you're having trouble pinning it because it rolls on you, if you have some spray starch, you can press it with that, and that will keep it sturdier for you. Okay, so just pin it all along your top edge. Like mine, it doesn't matter. My fabric looks the same whether it's, the top or if you look at the bottom, it looks the same. But if you have a print or something, whatever is the top of your print, whichever way your design goes, just lay it out. Make sure you're looking at the top of it. That's the edge you want to fold under, and then we're going to stitch all the way across. Okay, now here we're going to draw out our line so that we can start to shear the fabric. But what you want to do, because you don't want, unless you want it sheared all the way down, I'm going to make mine sheared just to my waistline. And so for me, I know the top of my bust here to my waistline is 12 inches. So I'll put myself a mark there because I know I'll start shearing my fabric and I'll only shear to say the 12-inch mark. Okay, so for me, from the top of my bust line here to my waistline, this is the 12 inches. So that's where I'm going to mark. And the thing with shearing, it isn't difficult, it's just time consuming. So just kind of need to have some patience so that you can mark out all of these lines. Okay, and I'll put one more marking just over here. If you're concerned that you won't sew straight, what you can do is once you put, all your spaces or your marks, just draw a line to connect them. Okay, yeah, that's good. And just do the same thing. Just keep going until you have these little tick marks all the way across. And then we'll come back and connect the lines. So in some spaces I'll use my white crayon here, or white fabric pencil is what it is. And all of these markings are washable. And all of these markings are water soluble. They will wash right out. Okay, so you just have to mark yourself stitching lines across the entire width of the fabric. My lines are a 1/2 inch apart because I am shirring the top 12 inches of my dress. So mine will be shirred to my waistline. And for me, that is 12 inches. And I have 24 lines because they are a 1/2 inch apart. And I think half an inch is a good width. Any wider, I mean, you could do it, but I would probably create a casing and then use a wider elastic, and not use and not use this thinner elastic that we're using, and not use this thinner elastic that we are using in our bobbin. Okay, and then if you need to, just go connect your lines. Okay, and you just want to make sure you switch your bobbin to the elastic thread. Okay, and this part, getting your stitch right, you'll need to adjust your stitch length. So you typically need a longer stitch to do your shearing, and that will vary based upon your machine. So my normal length is 2.2. I think I'll take it up. I'll try like a 2.6. Just check your machine's manual for how to change your stitch length. So just do some test stitches on some scrap fabric and see how that looks to you. So to shear our fabric, all we do is stitch along the stitch, and the machine will do it all by itself. So I'm going to start, I don't necessarily want to start, me, I have the selvage here, so I definitely don't want to start there. And even if this is my end, I'm going to start maybe a half an inch in, because I'll end up putting a stitching line there for my back seam. So I will start probably about right here. And all you do is stitch along all of your straight lines. Actually, what I'm finding out is that my presser foot is a good guide. So I would still say draw the lines, but then depending upon your presser foot, you might be able to use that as a guide as well. If nothing else, it'll help you with your lines. It will at least help you with your lines. Okay, so I have sheared it as much as I want to. I've gone down to about my 12 inches from the top. So this would be the bodice, the top part of my dress. So what we have is just one continuous piece of fabric. So you could just stop right here, and then you would just put your right sides together and sew your center back seam all the way down. What I think I'm going to do for me is, so that I don't have this ruffled effect up here, I'm going to put some elastic in the top of it. And all I've done is cut myself a piece of elastic that is the measurement of my upper button, an extra inch or two, so that I can lap the ends over to sew it in the end. So if you're doing this, cut your elastic, and before you sew the back seam, insert your elastic into the upper part of your dress. Okay, so you can see by inserting the elastic, it gives you more of a, say, a flattened out look. So the ruffled effect is gone away, which is what I wanted. So you could leave it ruffled like it was, or if you don't want it that way, just add some elastic in the top of it. Okay, and I'll just add a pin here. And then I'll sew both sides to sew the elastic in place before I sew the dress together. I just want to feel for it and make sure I am not twisted anywhere. Okay, so I'll sew my elastic into place on either end. Then you just want to put your right sides together and just sew your the back seam of it. Or if you wanted to, this could certainly be the front seam and you could have a split in it. Do whatever you want to. I'm just making sure my two bottom stitching lines line up there. Okay, I've done my back seam, and for me, I'm just going to turn up the lower edge and do a narrow hem. So try it on, and whatever length works for you, just hem it to that length.